Hey there riders, Motojourno Chris here, and recently I went to the Australian launch of Yamaha's 2019 YZF-R3. I've just got the bike back because I'm dropping it back to Yamaha Australia for bikereview.com.au. Jeff's just had this bike, he's going to do a full review, and I wanted to have a quick chat here because I only really did a quick first impression when I went to the launch, and I've now had time to collect my thoughts. And there's a lot of stuff they've done on this bike. As you'll note, they haven't changed the engine. It's a beautiful engine. It is such a nice thing. It's the Mini R6 in my opinion. Obviously, you know, I am kind of belaboring that particular comparison because the R6 is an amazing machine, but this is as close as you're going to get to an R6 and to that kind of performance, if you ask me, in the learner segment, bar nothing. And it's got a beautiful engine. It's nice and soft off the initial throttle opening, which means as a new rider who's getting started, it's going to be an easy thing to get started on. Not to mention that, but you could probably start it in second gear and barely notice. It's just got that nice pull from down low. It has got a beautiful kind of torque curve. Even though it hasn't got heaps and heaps of torque, it's got a nice linear torque curve. It pulls beautifully. I was rolling around the back streets in third gear, you know, like way down in the revs, and it was still pulling nicely. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a very flexible engine. It's a very nice thing to ride. Not only sportily, because it's a beautiful thing through the twisties, and it's a great kind of sports bike, beginner sports bike, but what's also great is it's a great everyday commuter, in my opinion, as well. It's going to do everything, and that's what you're looking for. Now, the changes for the 2019 model, it's got sportier 37mm forks, it's got a sportier shock in it. It's a much sportier overall machine as far as the ergonomics. I find if I've got the arches of my feet on the pegs, it's quite comfortable, it's quite roomy. If I get the balls of my feet up, it's a much more aggressive and sportier machine because I'm obviously reducing the amount of space between the seat and the peg, and that lets me grip into the bike really easily, which is part of what they did to the tank. They actually lowered the tank and they kind of changed the shape a little bit. They made a lot more room behind and kind of in under the screen so that you can jump right in as a rider. Obviously, if you've got your helmet on, it's going to be a little bit harder, and they've made it an even better track and sports bike, which you would think, well, as a lambs machine, do you really want that? Well, there's a little bit of a compromise because the suspension is sportier and a little bit rougher for your general commuting duties, but I still think it's a nice machine. There was only a couple of times when the really big bumps really upset the rear. The front end feels beautiful, and that's going to happen on most bikes. You got preload adjustability on the rear, and that's it. That's not a problem. That's all you're getting on the vast majority of these bikes. And for the price, I think it's a very, very good setup. Something that Yamaha does exceptionally well, it's that they get a setup like this and a bike like this, and they make it great for a wide variety of riders. That's one of the things that the MT-07 did so well. They introduced it and everyone just kind of went, wow, it's amazing, you know, what a beautiful bike this is. And I'm talking the restricted version because I'm here in Australia, but people went, for a restricted bike, this thing's insane. It's got, you know, good suspension, good brakes, good everything. You know, it's obviously, being a restricted motorcycle, there are compromises built into it. But as a rider, you just jumped on it and just had so much fun, and it just did everything so well. And it did it very, very well for a wide variety of riders, which is so important because, you know, on a bike like this, you don't have the adjustability that a much more expensive bike has. And so as a rider, you can't jump on and fiddle around with the, you know, the fork settings. You really have limited adjustability on the rear, but Yamaha do a great job of making sure it works for, I can't say everyone, but for a very wide variety of riders. And that means that a very wide variety of riders, regardless of their height and their weight, are going to be able to jump on this bike and be pretty happy with it. And especially for a beginner rider, what you're expecting out of a bike is going to be a lot lower than someone who's been riding for 10 years. You know, I've got something with full Öhlins in the garage, and I jump on this and go, man, this is really good. I'm just amazed at how good it is for such a basic suspension system. And obviously they have updated it, and it's got really great forks in it. It's got great front end feel, but you know, Yamaha have just really exceeded my expectations with this bike. And I remember when I first rode the R3 back when it was launched, I couldn't believe how good it was then, but it's definitely a sharper machine now, and it's a beautiful road bike. I'm going to do a separate track test on my opinion. I've been working on that for a little while just to get my thoughts together, because I'm not a super duper track rider. I'm not that quick, but that's coming up soon, so stay tuned for that. But as far as riding this as a road bike, it is such a beautiful machine, and it comes down to a lot of different factors. Those front brakes, or that front brake I should say, it's got a single disc on the front. That does not have that much bite in it. For really sporty riding, there's plentiful power. When I first jumped on it for around towning, I was kind of like, oh, I feel like there could be a little bit more bite on the front. However, the thing is, you've got the rear for a lot of that around town. You use that for a little bit more slowing and stopping, and the front brake is ideally suited for really having a fang through the twisties. And I've got to say, I love that front brake system. Even though it's not as powerful as on the Ninja 400, I still think it works exceptionally well. And if you really wanted more bite, you can put different pads in, so no concern there. You've got that beautiful LCD dash. It's really simple, but it just works so well. Really happy with that. You've got great vision through the mirrors. Obviously you can flick those back. Filtering on this is going to be nice and easy. The finish quality is really good. Obviously it's built to a price. I think one of the big things that stood out to me, I should say, is the kind of tinny lever there and that panel there. But I mean, it's such a small complaint to make on the bike. And likewise, the exhaust is pretty blah. But it's actually got a not bad exhaust note to it, I've got to say, at idle, and it's a screamer. So as the revs rise, you get that nice kind of real sports bike, kind of similar to an inline four kind of scream, but you know, it's much more muted than on a full sports bike. Now obviously chucking on an aftermarket exhaust is going to be one of the first things a lot of new riders do. It's worth doing if you want a bit more sound out of the bike, but I've got to say, as a standard system, it's got a nice little bit of note to it, enough that I'm not immediately going, that's the first thing I got to do. And it's just, like I said, a really, really fun machine. It's great to revisit it, because when we did the launch, obviously we're doing a day ride, we did a track ride, and then you come back to the bike later, and it's interesting to see whether everything that you got from that first impression is still true, and it definitely is. It's got a nice, comfortable seat, good for longer periods. I did like about an hour and a half on the way home yesterday, because I took the long route, because I wanted to have a good ride on this bike. Comfortable as far as ergonomics, and you know, those lower bars, I don't really notice them being lower than the previous model, but I think part of that is because they've lowered the tank as well. It's much harder to notice that when you just jump on the bike. It's, like I said, it pulls very, very well. It's got a beautiful linear engine in it. The performance is just, it's beautiful. Right up to the red line, it just pulls hard. Doesn't have the low down torque of some of the competition, but I have to say, I just don't miss it at all on this particular machine. And I know there are people who are going to look at the spec sheets and go, but you know, such a big difference. Realistically speaking, I think in real world terms, there's a difference in the feel of the bikes, but I don't feel like there's a real significant difference in performance. Not for road riding. On the track, those kind of differences are obviously, you know, significantly kind of magnified. But there's nothing wrong with the performance on offer with this. It's still really right up there in the pinnacle of the 300 to 400 segment, which is saying a lot, because it's such a competitive segment at the end of the day. It's got a reasonably light clutch. It's got a nice gearbox. So overall, I really like the styling. I reckon it looks pretty cool in this satin red finish. It's not going to be for everyone. It's got great headlights. It's got great cool indicators on it. Obviously, you're not getting anything LED as far as the indicators, because this is built to a real budget. But for the price you're paying, this is a really fun, nice machine. And I've got to say, I think out of all the Lambs bikes, this is the one that to me feels the most like a proper super sport machine. Now obviously I haven't ridden the RC390 in quite a while, and that's got even more aggressive ergonomics, but this kind of has that bigger bike feel, and it is a very well balanced bike. It's a beautiful thing through the twisties. It's such a nice thing to have some fun on. It's a very sharp handler actually with these tires on. It's something I particularly noticed having ridden a fair few other bikes recently, and I think putting the standard GPR 300 tires on would slow down that turn in, which is probably going to be a better thing for new riders. But it's still a beautiful, nimble bike. It's an easy bike to ride, and it's got so much performance on offer, and it's such an easy thing to access because of that beautiful linear engine. Overall, I gotta say, like my first impressions were, this is an awesome machine, and definitely worth looking at if you want a new sports bike themed beginner bike, whether you're in a restricted market or in a non-restricted market where you can essentially buy anything. I still reckon this is one of the best options available in that beginner sports bike category. And on top of that, it's going to be a great bike to learn on, and you'll be able to learn so much from this. Anyway, like I said, I'm going to do a track kind of perspective in review as well. That test will be up soon. This is the R3. Don't forget to check out bikereview.com.au's full test as well. Jeff's an A-grade racer, and he's going to be giving his opinion on this bike, and you know, it'll be interesting to see how his thoughts compare to my own, I think. Anyway, don't forget to hit that notification bell, let me know what you think about this bike. Stay safe out there, and I'll be back soon.